system in the Old Testament, God was foreshadowing the gospel, the fact that a perfect priest and a perfect sacrifice would come in the future to live the life that human beings should live and to die the death that human beings should die. But folks, none of these sacrifices actually took away sin. Legally, no one was saved until Jesus lived his perfect life and died on the cross of Calvary. Now you say, weren't people saved in the Old Testament? Yes, they were. Do you know how they were saved? By seeing Jesus Christ in their sacrifices, the Jesus that would come in the future. In other words, they were saved by looking at the sacrifices and seeing in the sacrifices and in the priest the future coming of the Messiah. They had faith in the Messiah. We are saved in the same way, only we look back to an accomplished fact. But both groups, Old Testament and New Testament, are saved by the same Jesus. In the Old Testament, they were saved on the basis of the promise. Today, we are saved on the basis of the fulfillment. But none of those ceremonies in the Old Testament could actually remove sin legally. Only could they be removed because they had faith in what Jesus would do. And that's the reason why in Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 4, we're told, for it is not possible that the blood of bulls and goats could take away sin. Now we want to come to the times of Christ. You see, we've looked at the gospel from different perspectives. We've looked at the gospel plan established in the ages of eternity. We looked at the gospel as it was announced to Adam and Eve. We've looked at the gospel as it was foreshadowed in the sacrificial system. Now we want to look at the fulfillment of this gospel promise. You see, the fulfillment of this promise was when Jesus Christ decided to leave the courts of heaven and come to this earth and live the life that all of us should live, in perfect obedience and harmony with the law of God. And then at the end of his life, after living a perfect life in harmony with the law of God, to take upon himself the sins of all of the world and make payment for all of those sins. Now Jesus could do this because Jesus created everyone. So he who created all could take the place of all. He could live a perfect life for all, and he could suffer death for all, according to the New Testament. So the mission of Jesus was to come and as a priest live an unblemished life, and as a sacrifice be an unblemished, perfect sacrifice. The New Testament makes it very clear that Jesus was an unblemished priest. Notice Hebrews chapter 4 and verse 15. Hebrews chapter 4 and verse 15. Here we find the Apostle Paul saying, for we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses. Another way of putting it is, we have a high priest who is able to sympathize with our weaknesses, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. Was he a perfect priest? A perfect high priest? Yes. Notice Hebrews 7 verse 26, where this idea of the perfect high priest is underlined. Once again, Hebrews 7:26 says, for such a high priest was fitting for us, who is holy, harmless, undefiled, separate from sinners, and has become higher than the heavens.